Welcome to Psalm 47. The Lord is the great King over all the earth. Many kings, but the great King over all the earth. Not just a country of Israel, but the whole earth. I suppose it's probably even the universe. But a king would have to be a king over people. And everything I've seen so far, as we have went into outer space, they're landed on other planets and meteors and so forth, that there's nothing living. Only so we have only here on earth, the king of the earth, because there are people here. If he was a king of these other places, then you would expect there would be subjects to the king, but it doesn't mention he's a king over Mars or any place else, but the planet Earth. For the director, as we have seen in so many of the Psalms, for the sons of Korah, which in the last 4, 5, 6 Psalms, we've had that, to the Korah, who was a rebellious person against Moses and Aaron, but yet his sons became ministers of the tabernacle. For the sons of Korah, a psalmos. All the nations clap hands. Shout to God with a voice of exaltation. For the Lord, the highest, is dreadful, a great king over all the earth. It could be fearful, could be another word for phoveros, of fearing. He's fearful. That is somebody that we need to obey, like a king. You don't go do the opposite of what a king says. You could lose your life in many kingdoms. You do whatever the king says, not a democracy. So all the nations clap hands. Well, nations don't clap hands, the people do, so there's a figure. And shout to God with a voice of exaltation, for the Lord, the highest, is dreadful or fearful, a great king over all the earth. And I have no problem with that, submitting to the kingdom of God. I ran across one man, and he was asking me about if I was going to vote, and I said, well, I'm not a citizen. He said, what do you mean you're not a citizen? I said, I'm not a citizen. I'm a subject. Subject of what? I'm a subject to King Jesus. And this is a good place to be. It's not a democracy of Jesus, is it? No. And then he, God, submitted peoples to us, and to the Jews, Israel, all the nations in Canaan, and nations under our feet. He submitted. Now, and he chose to us the inheritance for us, that is the land of Canaan, all the way back to Abraham. The beauty of Jacob, whom he loved, and Jacob became Israel after he wrestled with God. God renamed Jacob Israel, and he chose where they were going to go. God ascended in a shout, and the Lord with the sound of a trumpet. Now, the only place I could think of that it's talking about possibly would be the fall of Jericho in the beginning of the book of Joshua, where all the people went around and they had trumpets, and then they shouted and so forth. Also maybe with Gideon later, a shout and a trumpet where they defeated the enemy. Verse 6, strum to our God, strum to our King, strum. Boy, if you're a guitar player, I don't know what else, a banjo player, anybody that does the strumming, then this is your verse. You could take this verse and copy it and paste it right on the top of your guitar and have it strum to our God, strum to our King, strum. For the King of all the earth, of all is God. Strum expertly. Yeah, so he doesn't want any bad music. He wants somebody to strums expertly. Now, not everybody that plays the guitar does, but keep practicing. God reigns over the nations. God sits upon his holy throne. So he reigns on the nations. He's over all the nations of the world. The nations are under his power, even though they don't see it. Rulers don't see it. Peoples in those nations don't see it. But he does. He says, then he sits on his holy throne. We see in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 47, and it says, "And he said to me, You see, O Son of Man, the place of my throne, and the place of the track of my feet, in which my name shall encamp in the midst of the house of Israel unto the eon?" And that's chapter 43, verse 7. And I believe that is on Mount Meron, where the house, the future temple and the altar will be, and it says the place of my throne. So the throne of God of some sort. And then it says, "I viewed until thrones were set." This is in Daniel. "And the old one of days sat down, and his garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was pure wool. His throne a flame of fire, and his wheels as fire blazing." And we see the wheels and the cherubim, all these things, in Daniel 7:9. In Zechariah 6:13 it says, "And he," it's talking about, quote, "a male, rising is his name," rising, R-I-S-I-N-G, like rising up. "And he shall receive virtue, and shall sit up and rule upon his throne." That would be Jesus. "And there shall be a priest at his right, and peaceable counsel will be between both." Zechariah 6:13, no longer a gulf between the priesthood and God. Then in Matthew 5:34, Jesus says, "But I say to you, do not swear by an oath wholly, nor on the heaven, for it is the throne of God." So now we see the throne of God is in the heaven. I was thinking about that earlier. I was outside and I was thinking about, Jesus, how he looked up into the heaven. And I looked up into the heaven, all I saw was blue sky and some clouds. And as I'm looking there, I'm thinking, I wonder what Jesus saw. Could he see beyond the atmosphere? Could he see beyond the cosmos of all of the nebulas and black holes and white holes and whatever holes are out there? Can Jesus see beyond all of that and see his Father in another realm of the heavens? Yes, I think he could. Absolutely. I think he did. And then in Matthew 19:28, he says that you, the one following me, which is us, in the regeneration, when that would be when Jesus reigns and we are taken with him, whenever the Son of Man should be seated upon the throne of his glory. So Jesus is going to be sitting on the throne. "You shall sit also upon 12 thrones, the disciples judging the 12 tribes of Israel." So we now see the throne of God in the heaven. We see Jesus on a throne, and we see 12 thrones by him with the 12 disciples judging Israel. Is that the end of the thrones? No. It says in Revelation 3:21, "The one overcoming, I will give to him to sit with me on my throne." And we are overcomers, overcoming the things of this world. We will have a place to sit in the heaven. And then in Revelation 4:4, it goes on for more thrones. "And round about the throne of God were 24 thrones." Now, probably the 12 are already mentioned, another 12. "And upon the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting down. Now, whether this is the 12 disciples and the 12 sons of Jacob, it doesn't say. 24 elders, older rulers, probably the disciples and the sons of Jacob. But then what about the throne? What's it like? And it says in Revelation 4:5, and from out of the throne went forth lightnings and voices and thunders, just as the Jews saw on Mount Sinai when they came to the holy mountain, and they were fearful and didn't want to see and hear all of this because it was so scary to them. And then again in Revelation, and before the throne was a sea, as a sea of glass, like unto ice or crystal. So now we got the throne of God and this ice there, and in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were 4 living creatures full of eyes in front and behind, as we saw in the book of Daniel when we mentioned it earlier. You can go there and, I'm sorry, Daniel, but Ezekiel has more of this in the very beginning of Ezekiel. And then in Revelation 5:6 it says, and I saw, and behold, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, a lamb standing as being slain. Well, I'm not exactly stationed maybe as being slain. The lamb, which is Jesus, is there in the midst of all of this. And then more, Revelation 20:11, and I saw a great white throne. Now, is that the color of that same throne? I'm not exactly sure, but there is a great white throne. It mentions in 20:11. You can go into that more in that chapter and verse. And then he showed to me a pure river of water of life, bright as crystal, going forth from out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. So the water that comes out of from Mount Meron and the temple, and the water goes to the east to the Lake of Galilee, and then it goes south to the Dead Sea. It gives life to have plants on both sides of the river that heal people, and that water heals the Dead Sea, where they can now have fish and they can fish in it. It's a replica of what is going on in the heaven. And I see them both existing at the same time. I believe that the New Jerusalem will have this water of life, because this is in Revelation 22:1. That's where it's talking about the cube that comes down from heaven, the New Jerusalem, where we will be. And this is on that cube. But on the earth, I believe there will be Mount Meron and the prince and all the things in the last 10 chapters of Ezekiel. And then we go back up to 47:9, and it says, rulers of peoples are brought together with the God of Abraham. That's interesting, isn't it? The God of Abraham, not the God of Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Judah, but the God of Abraham. Rulers and peoples are brought together with the God of Abraham. Abraham, to me, not being a Jew, I'm a child of Abraham. I am not a child of Moses or a child of Isaac or Jacob. But I am a child of Abraham. And we are brought together. The peoples are not more than just the Jews here. This is obviously what he's talking about, because we are brought together with the God of Abraham, not Moses. For by God, the strong ones of the earth were lifted up exceedingly. Now, exactly what that's referring to, your guess is probably as good as mine. For by God, the strong ones, mighty of the earth, were lifted up exceedingly. I suppose if a time of God's ruling, then the ones that he lifts up are lifted up exceedingly. That's probably about the best I can come up with that ending verse. Psalm 48, our next video, Mount Zion, the city of the great king. And we'll find out about where Mount Zion is, all about it. Hope you join us in the next video seminar. And until then, God bless.